So we've got people from all over the world on here. We have a Dubai, we have a Mexico, we have a Philippines, 2 a.m., we have Canada, we have all over the US, and I think we're pretty ready to go. So uh, I actually have a new, maybe there's somebody on here who hasn't watched one of our many, many webinars or presentations or interviews or podcasts. There's a new podcast coming out in 2 weeks, by the way, that we recorded the other day. But since I got your new and updated bio, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to use it. I'm going to read it as if we haven't done this 1,000 times before. So if anybody on here is new, Kieran is a research microbiologist and a health and wellness expert who aims to make complex information understandable to all. He has founded a number of successful health and supplement companies over the last 20 years, including co-founding and leading Microbiome Labs, the preeminent microbiome therapeutics focused brand among healthcare professionals. He's currently a co-founder and partner in 3 other companies that aim to revolutionize wellness care. He's conducted and published several research studies in scientific journals, has published chapters in scientific textbooks and reference books, and has global patents, and is a sought-after speaker on human health and the microbiome. I'm Michael. I'm the guy that just sits by and watches him do his thing and answers your questions, but I'm the founder of Rebel Health, and I'll be manning the chat and the Q&A. And I told them, I don't know how long your teaching is tonight. I do have a hard stop on the hour because we're an hour later than normal. So I had to get a permission slip even to be able to do this one. And I cannot go long. But if there's time at the end, I told them to put the questions in the Q&A. And this is a follow-up to a webinar we did. I think it was November. It seems like
Yeah.
we just did it, but this year is like fast forwarded. So
Yeah.
it feels like we just did it, but it was 9 months ago we did it on the skin biome and leaky skin. And there was probably as much stuff in that one that I didn't already know as any of these that I've co-hosted with you over the years, like new information, new stuff I'd never heard of. It was really fascinating, and we got a huge response from it. And when I reached out to schedule a webinar for this month, I said, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I've got a lot of new stuff on the skin and new things to share." So I think this will be good. The skin's always a super popular topic. I mean, who
Mhm.
doesn't want their skin to look and feel better and younger? And now we have more reasons to want that because of the inverse relationship with health, which I think everybody's going to learn about here. So I will get out of the way, and you can, I don't know if you're sharing screen, if you're teaching like that tonight, if you're talking, I don't know what your plan is, but again, one more time, questions in the Q&A. You can put stuff in the chat, but please put the questions in the Q&A, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yes, and it's an exciting follow-up because since then, since November, we've of course we've completed a study on it. We've got a lot more cases. So we're really starting to understand the impact on the skin of rebalancing the skin microbiome and the role that the spores play. So we have more information to share, and I think it's just really exciting to me because the skin microbiome is kind of my new obsession when it comes to the world of the microbiome. I still have a lot of focus on the gut, but we've made a lot of strides and impact on the gut, as some of the people who may be on here already know through product lines at Microbiome Labs and lots of education. But the skin is still kind of new, and as it turns out, the skin microbiome has a huge impact on your overall health. So it goes beyond the cosmetic, beyond looking good and aging slower and so on. It's really about overall health, and for some people it could be kind of a missing link in all the things they've tried and done and to optimize their health, and maybe this is a component that they're missing. So I'll share a PowerPoint. We could probably get through it in about 35-40 minutes. I'm going to emphasize the effects of balancing the skin microbiome, and then go a little bit into where the data comes from as to how the skin itself impacts health, what that generally looks like, and then I'll cover some of the microbiome aspects of it as well. I don't want to go into too much detail here on that, and because we have other webinars we can send that go a little bit deeper dive into that. So let me see if I can share my screen here properly. Okay. PowerPoint here. You see the one slide, right? Okay. Can you see
Oh,
this,
sorry,
Michael?
I was muted. Yeah, yeah, I see impact of biome balancing. And so I think you're good to go.
Okay, awesome. So, really what we wanted to see is, can we rebalance the functionality of the skin, the health of the skin by just balancing the microbiome of the skin, right? Without doing a whole lot of anything else. And it's a really important topic to address because it's probably at this point in life when as people understand the importance of the microbiome, it's probably assumed that balancing the skin microbiome, like balancing the gut microbiome and any other microbiota in your body, has a beneficial effect. But we really wanted to understand the impact of that. Is it short term, long term, or both? How soon can we see that effect? So that's really what we've taken on here at Civ. And then we will also extrapolate this into long term effects. So when we started looking at it, we developed this product. It's a spore-based biome balancing serum. Now, the reason why we use the spores is when you look at the skin microbiome, there's really two categories of bacteria that fall on your skin. One are residential bacteria, and the other one are transient bacteria. The skin is, of course, the outward-facing component of your body. So the skin comes in contact with a lot of microbes throughout the day. Now, in the case of the modern life, it's probably a different set of microbes than it used to be, which is part of where we get some of the skin conditions from and some of the health issues from, because we used to encounter a lot of natural organisms in the dirt and in the environment. Now we're coming across a lot of resistant microbes, pathogens, things that are found in places like the public bathroom and sterilized areas or pre-sterilized areas. So the encountering of microbes in the outside environment is different. The transient microbes that you encounter in your skin have a profound effect on both the resident microbes and the immune response that occurs on your skin. So then it becomes really important to try to control or adjust to some degree the transient microbes that your skin gets exposed to, because that, like I said, has an impact on the resident microbes and the immunological response on the skin. This is where the spores became really important to us because, again, if you think about the natural environment, our ancestors for the vast majority of human evolution were interacting with the natural dirt environment, right? So you're getting dust and dirt on your skin. You're going for baths and rivers and streams and so on. You're encountering natural environments where there's a lot of spores, and spores are ubiquitous. So then you start thinking about the role of spores on the skin, in addition to ingesting the spores, but the role of spores on the skin is that they do have a quorum sensing effect on the skin, meaning they can get on the skin and then they can sense the environment like they would in the gut, and they will read the microbial environment and understand which microbes are there. If they are dysfunctional microbes, they can actually adjust the environment on the skin itself. Now, how exactly they do that, we don't quite know yet. There's a couple of good hypotheses just from looking at existing studies. Number one is the spores may be able to secrete some antimicrobial compounds even in the spore state. So even if they haven't colonized the skin and aren't living on the skin permanently, they may still be able to secrete some antimicrobial compounds. The second part of it is modulation of the immune response. So they can, even in the spore state, we know this from the gut, that they can activate immune responses in a given area. So they may be able to get your immune system to target dysfunctional microbes on the skin, thereby rebalancing the skin, right? Those are two of the hypotheses. There's a couple of other ones, but generally what we see, and you'll see the effects here, is that the spores absolutely do enhance and modulate the skin microbiome. It's not all spores. We've selected the couple that are really important and put them in a format that they can do this, because they won't necessarily do it just by putting the product on your or putting spores on your skin. You have to have the right carrier system. You have to get them in the right layer of the skin and so on. So this is where the biome balancing serum came from. It's a quorum sensing serum that helps modulate the skin microbiome, right? So that's the effect. Now, when we looked at the original cases, right? So we wanted to see, okay, let's look at some cases where there's some clear dysbiosis. Then let's see within 14 days, 30 days, can we modulate the dysbiosis and what effect that has on the skin? Keep in mind, we're looking at this from the lens of the microbes, not as much of the lens of what is changing on the skin. And we want to see if we change the microbes, does that impact the skin itself? So this is one of the earlier cases. One of the things you'll notice about this individual is they have corneum bacterium at 2.7% relative abundance on their skin. And after the 14 days, you see a reduction in corneum bacterium. Now, this is a beneficial thing because corneum bacterium is one of those microbes that increases as you age. And on aged skin, you tend to have a higher level of corneum bacterium. It's associated with redness, with thinning of the skin, with dryness of the skin, the age-related symptomology of skin. So if you're starting to get a growth of corneum bacterium on the skin and you can bring that down, you should see a positive impact on the skin. Now, even beyond that, this individual had almost 60% Cutibacterium acnesis. Now, generally, when you have 60% Cutibacterium acnesis, when you have a very high level of Cutibacterium acnesis on the face, it likely means that this individual also has acne, right? Cutibacterium acnesis is known to be the thing that propagates the formation of acne lesions in individuals. And so seeing this, we said, okay, wow, this is something we can measurably look at if we can bring down in an individual, right? And so we did, again, after 14 days of using the spore serum once a day, we brought down the Cutibacterium acnesis levels from almost 60% down to 13%, right? So think about the age-related microbe corneum bacterium going down by almost a 50% change in the total abundance. And then the Cutibacterium acnesis going from almost 60% relative abundance down to 13% relative abundance, right? That's a huge drop in the amount of Cutibacterium. Now, if I looked at this individual, I never saw them, and I just looked at this microbiome analysis on their before, what I would probably guess is this individual has a lot of red and inflamed acne lesions, right? Especially seeing the corneum bacterium, they probably have more hyperpigmentation as a result of other lesions. When the lesion goes away, it leaves a dark spot. They probably have lack of uniformity on skin coloring and lots of inflamed acne lesions. Sure enough, that's exactly what we saw, right? So this was an individual who had actually been on Accutane, I think, at least one round. He had red inflamed lesions on his forehead, lots of redness and hyperpigmentation throughout the forehead as well. And then within a relatively short amount of time, all of that cleared up. The red inflammatory lesions all cleared up. You'll notice also around his nostrils, the irritation and inflammation there, that is also cleared up quite a bit. There's more uniformity and better texture and tone to the skin and clarity. That is the effect of bringing down the corneum bacterium. And then the elimination of Cutibacterium acnesis to a very normal level basically eliminates all of this red inflammatory lesions, right? So this is the kind of effect that you see when you rebalance the skin microbiome, how quickly it can make a phenotypic or a symptomatic change on the skin itself. Now, when we go to, here's another case to bring up that's interesting. Again, this individual also had about 12.7% corneum bacterium, and then Cutibacterium acnesis at 14%, not too much overtly abundant Cutibacterium, but nonetheless, we were able to bring the Cutibacterium down to some degree. And I believe the corneum bacterium came down as well. But I would look at this individual's microbiome and go, they might have a few inflamed lesions here and there, but they likely have a uniformity issue on the skin because the elevated levels of corneum bacterium means they probably have hyperpigmentation, poor texture on the skin, maybe thinness of the skin and drying as well. And as you can see in the after, the corneum bacterium is not even there anymore. The relative abundance is so low that it's probably down in the 1% range or less, right? So this individual's skin probably improved dramatically in terms of tone, texture, and clarity. And then there were likely a few inflammatory lesions that came down as well. And then if you look at staph epidermidis, which is actually the very beneficial staph that you want to have on the skin. It's protective of the skin. Bringing that back up, which it wasn't even at a detectable level initially, will show that this individual's tone, texture, and resilience on the skin improved dramatically. And then sure enough, when you look at the individual, you look at their before and afters in as little as 14 days, didn't have a whole lot of acne, but a few inflamed lesions. All of those are gone. You see the tone, texture, clarity on the skin, how much that has improved from one side to the other in just 14 days. That is the effect of bringing down the corneum bacterium, increasing the staph epidermidis, and then, of course, the inflamed lesions, bringing down the Cutibacterium, right? So, again, another example of when you modulate the skin microbiome, how quickly the phenotype or the symptomology on the skin can change. This is the kind of thing we were looking to prove as we went along. So I'm just going to show you a series of other tests. Again, 30 days from baseline to post, looking at reduction of lesion count, redness, improved hydration, tone, texture, clarity, and so on. This is a really exciting case because you just look at the intensity of the lesions, right? They're very angry, they're very inflamed, they're very red, and likely very painful in many ways as well. And in 10 days, just 10 days, you see a huge reduction. And this individual only used sieve and sunscreen. That's it, right? Dramatic reduction in lesion counts and the intensity of the lesion, improved hydration levels, improved skin tone, texture, and clarity. And again, in just 10 days. So when you shift the microbiome, you make dramatic changes to what the skin looks like and functions like. And that's the important thing we've seen here. Again, here's another thing, very intense case, very intense red inflamed lesions, huge reduction in lesion count and redness, improved skin clarity and tone in as little as 90 days. This is, again, even though this is acne and very inflamed acne, it is an example of what can happen in terms of improving the health and resilience of your skin when you alter the skin microbiome, right? That is the important message here, because it helps with acne, it helps with eczema, it can help with redness and all kinds of other things. It's really about shifting the microbiome of the skin in a positive way. Here's another one, 30 days later, pretty inflamed lesion, high lesion count, especially in that chin area or that jaw area. 30 days, almost completely cleared up, right? And then a significant redness and significant reduction in redness, an improvement in clarity and tone as well. Now, clarity and tone, we may say that in a passing way. The thing about clarity and tone is there are mechanisms happening at the cellular level on the skin that are incredibly important, not only for what we perceive as clarity and tone, but what is resilience on the skin. Because if we are improving clarity and tone, what that means is that we are reducing hyperpigmentation, which means the melanocytes or the melanosomes that are producing the melanin and overtly producing the melanin are undergoing a senescent type of activity, meaning they are becoming zombie cells, right? That's a key feature of aging, is lots of cells in the body go into senescence, including the melanocytes on the skin. And the melanocytes are the most susceptible to that senescence. This is why dark spots are called age spots. So they become zombie cells, meaning they keep producing the melanin without dying and recycling. We seem to be affecting that as you see it phenotypically, right? So that's a very important part, because that's a very defined age-related issue that we seem to be arresting and improving. The glow and the texture and all that is about the turnover on the top layers of the skin. The turnover on the top layers of the skin, the very dead layers on top, is the responsibility of certain microbes on the skin. So those microbes have to break down the skin cells and get rid of them, right? So then gives the skin more clarity and more glow. On top of that, the ceramide, which is the fatty acid layer that's on the epidermis of the skin, that actually protects the skin from losing too much moisture, and it also protects the skin from too many toxins entering in, which may elicit an immune response and create redness. That ceramide layer we seem to be restoring, because that is a key aspect of improving tone, texture, and clarity. right? And then finally, we're likely balancing the pH of the skin as well, because pH balanced skin is one that has high tone, texture, and clarity. The pH balancing is the responsibility of microbes as well. There are bacteria that break down oils that are being secreted by your skin into fatty acids. The fatty acids lower the pH and acidify the skin. That's a very important feature of healthy skin, is a lower pH. You want your skin to be somewhere between pH of 4 to 5-ish and not above that, because above that, what starts to happen is you start to get the growth of fungus. So you start to get a malassezia that will grow, and that creates a lot of issues on the face, including dryness, itchy, redness, and becomes a risk factor for Alzheimer's down the road, right? So balancing the pH on the skin is also really important. We are likely doing all of these things just by shifting the microbiome in a positive way. So even though we say improve tone, texture, clarity as kind of a passing thing, know that there's some very, very important skin resilient mechanisms that are happening underneath or on the layer of the skin that we cannot overlook. So same here, reduce lesion count, reduce redness, improve clarity and tone. And again, this is just in 2 weeks, right? And reducing the redness is a huge thing, right? Because redness means that there's an inflammatory response happening in the skin. That means your immune system has recruited a bunch of pro-inflammatory innate immune cells to the region, and they're eliciting an immune response. Now, that's not a great thing. You need some immune response early on in an infection or things like that to control the infection. But if your skin is continuously red, it means that your skin is too thin and there's too much circulation of immune factors at that layer of skin. That can often mean that there's also systemic inflammation as a result of that skin inflammation. So reducing inflammation of the skin is really, really an important thing. Same here, improved hydration, reduced redness, improved skin tone, texture, and clarity. Again, in just 2 weeks, you could see a very dramatic change in how red her skin is at baseline compared to 14 days later, right? That is a huge improvement in the endotoxic-like response that leaky skin normally has. And we'll talk a little bit more about what leaky skin is. Reduce redness, improve clarity. Again, short amount of time, 7 days. In this case, 14 days, measurable change in the number of inflammatory lesions and total lesion count. And you're starting to see an improvement in skin texture and tone as well. This individual likely has a fungal overgrowth, which is why you see the flaking and the red kind of lesions there with all the flakiness. It's kind of like having really bad dandruff on the head. This version of a skin condition is not uncommon for people with facial hair or happening on the scalp. This is likely a fungal overgrowth, as I mentioned. It's likely malassezia. And again, all of that is gone in 14 days, right? There's a dramatic shift, because if you look at the base of the hair, you see all those red bumps and little lesions all over the skin. That is indicative of an inoculation or infection by a potential fungus issue, right? So resolving this in as little as 14 days is a huge step. And then that has all kinds of implications. You'll also notice on the side of the bridge of his nose, the difference in the redness there between before and after as well. Same thing here, completely disappeared, inflamed, irritated lesions, improved skin tone, texture, and clarity. Same here, you see that as well. And then we also did a 30-day study with 317 participants who all had mild to moderate acne and redness, and so had disrupted skin microbiomes. This is an age distribution. The majority of people are between 25 and 35. We had 32% of the people between 36 and 42, and some between 18 and 24 years of age. 95% female, but 4% male. And overall, here's the results of the study. 95.2% of people reported an improvement in the hydration of the skin, 91.5% improvement in youthfulness of the skin, and then almost 94% showed that the skin felt much more nourished. And so their skin generally felt healthier. We also saw almost 90% of the individuals reported a significant reduction in inflammation in their skin. And keep in mind that this cohort were people that experienced moderate inflammation and acne on their skin. Almost 90% of them said a reported improvement in complexion and 87% improvement in the tone of their skin as well. 86% of all of the individuals would recommend Sib's Biome Balancing Serum to their friends and family. So that to us is a very positive thing. There were no adverse events. Nobody had a bad reaction. We've also done a number of studies on, is this comedogenic, right? So comedogenic means that will it cause lesions or comedones, which are the lesions, the inflammatory and non-inflammatory lesions like you get in acne. And we've proven through a clinical trial that it doesn't cause comedones. We've also proven that it's safe for sensitive skin. It's safe for all skin types, so oily, dry, and so on. We've tested that, and it's now also recommended by dermatologists. So all of that work was done by a outside third-party clinical research organization, which we've completed that as well. That's also something new that was completed since our last conversation. So this is the comedogenic trial. It's a single-blind, single-center trial with 30 healthy volunteers. They do patch application to compare treated part of the skin with non-treated part of the skin. The objective is really to see, does it create blackheads, comedones, irritation to the skin in general compared to the control part of the skin. It's a duration of 6 weeks. They use quite a liberal amount of it. And the patches are in place for 47 to 71 hours, depending on when the patch was removed and added to that individual. We had a good mix of male and female volunteers, and we had all skin types in this particular test, right? So we had sensitive skin, we had mix of dry, normal, oily skin, and so on. And the conclusion was that there was no comedogenic response. There was no sensitive skin response. So this test showed that this is very good and very compatible to all skin types. Now, I mentioned quorum sensing technology earlier. This is really where the rubber hits the road for how this works, right? We have a couple of the particular strains that are really good at quorum sensing. We've been using the quorum sensing in the gut microbiome all these years. That's a big part of how products like Megaspore work in the gut. But this quorum sensing is really important because the quorum sensing is a communication of all of the microbes on the skin. And these quorum sensing agents like bacillus can interfere with those signals. They can change the signals, they can enhance the signals, they can cause the good bacteria to enhance themselves by helping boost their signals. They can disrupt the signals of pathogenic organisms by bringing them down. So they do all of these amazing modulations on the skin, but this is where the rubber hits the road in terms of the mechanism of action of how this unique biome balancing serum helps the skin overall, right? So it builds resilience. Now, the reason why we say it builds resilience is because the barrier function of the skin is very much dependent on the microbiome of the skin, right? As the microbiome of the skin becomes disrupted, you start to see things like what we saw in many of the before pictures. You start to see acne, you start to see redness, you start to see fine lines and wrinkles showing up, you start to see a thinning of the skin, you start to see hyperpigmentation and discoloration throughout the skin, you start to see dryness, right? All these things that we think about as negative effects of aging or, I just have bad skin, that whole kind of thing, all of those conditions that we talk about are a result of dysbiosis on the skin. Now, those things tend to come first, but what follows is the barrier function of the skin starts to become compromised. And the barrier function is incredibly important to maintain resilience, because if you have a dysfunctional barrier of the skin, what tends to happen is you lose a lot of beneficial things going out, like moisture. For example, your skin can't retain moisture because that ceramide layer is not functioning. So you get a lot of evaporative loss of moisture, and then toxins and pathogens and microbes and all can go in further than they should be able to on a normal, healthy skin with normal, healthy barrier. They go in further and it elicits an inflammatory immunological response at that stage. It also interrupts the normal mechanisms of the skin, the things I talked about earlier, the turning over of the cells, the acidification of the skin, the upregulation of collagen and elastin fiber synthesis, the formation and maintenance of the ceramide layer, all of these important housekeeping things that make skin healthy and functional, those things become compromised as well when you start to lose the effective balanced microbiome on the skin. So this is why you start to lose resilience. That means your skin becomes more and more susceptible to negative stimuli, such as sun damage, for example, or dryness outside, or rubbing against something, or the foods you might eat, or the things you might put on your skin. All of those things start to become more and more of a problem because your skin loses resilience and your skin becomes leaky, right? This delivers relief. It targets, it's a targeted serum that can be used on your skin, and we'll talk about how you do that, and it supports the balancing of the skin microbiome, right? So far, we've seen no particular type of skin that this is not applicable to, so it's applicable to all. We've shown that in clinical trials. There's no contraindications. It's so easy to use. It's once a day application. I'll show it after I stop sharing screen. I have a tube right here, and it's effective with that, with rapid results. And you can use it right in your normal skincare routine. If you're washing your face or your neck or even your body, at any given time, you can apply it on that washed and clean skin before putting on moisturizers and toners and everything else that you may do. These are the ingredients, right? Super simple. Four ingredients in it. Squalane, which is a biomimetic oil. So it's an oil that helps carry it a little bit deeper into the skin, and it rubs into the skin beautifully. We don't want any outside oily feeling to the skin. This is why selecting a biomimetic oil is really important. And then next we have a mixture of caprylic and capric fatty acids, which are also really important. Again, pH balances, but then it helps bring the spores a little bit deeper into the epidermis, because these are very bioavailable oils that get absorbed amazingly well into the skin. And then we have the glycerol caprolate, which is a natural plant-based emollient that again helps carry the spores to the right place, but it regulates moisture on the skin and acts as a humidifier to the skin. So generally, the carrier system itself is really good for the skin, on top of being an amazing carrier for the spores and bringing the spores in. And then the active ingredient is a proprietary blend of 2 spores that we have in here, right? So no preservatives, no other additives, nothing. Very simple 4-ingredient formula here. How to use, as I mentioned, you basically use it on clean skin before adding anything else on, before adding moisturizer, SPF, and so on. And so that is the final part of this. Let me give you a little bit on leaky skin itself. Just to touch on the skin microbiome and how it's distributed. The face has very different types of microbes on the skin than the rest of the body. In particular, because the face has a lot of anaerobic areas. The face is a very oily structure with large pores. And so within those those oil-filled pores, sebum-filled pores, you get a lot of anaerobic environment. So you tend to have microbes that do well in an anaerobic environment that colonize the face. Cutibacteria magnesis is one of those. Staph epidermidis is a good one to have. Propionum bacteria is actually really good as well. That's a beneficial bacteria. Corneum bacteria is not good. That starts to show up when the skin starts losing some of those features of being well moisturized and having adequate oil production and so on. You also don't want Staph aureus because it can cause a lot of redness and inflammation on the skin. But generally, keep in mind that the ecosystem of the face is going to be very different than the rest of the body, where you have a lot of dryness. So you have your arms and legs and lower back and so on. These areas tend to have much higher diversity actually on the skin than on the face. The face tends to have 2 or 3 types of microbes that are predominating. On the body, on the dry areas, you have much higher diversity. You can have up to 1,000 different species living on the skin at any given time. And diversity is a key part of resilience on the rest of the body as well. Major disruptors of skin ecosystem: age, gender, genetics, environment, and so on, diet, hormones, immune function, lifestyle, right? People are using a lot of antimicrobial soaps and things like that. And then when you start thinking about leaky skin, right? What's important to understand is the core tenets of how this works. You've got the microbial community on the skin. The skin is made up of host cells, and the host cells are in constant communication with the immune system, right? So you've got this triad of players here. You've got the microbes, the host cell that the microbes are sitting on, and then the immune system that is constantly in communication with the host cell. Now, the microbes have an influence on what the host cell is experiencing. And then depending on what the host cell is experiencing, it can have an effect on the immune response. So let's say you've got pathogenic microbes, you've got dysfunctional microbes. They are producing toxins on the skin that is impacting the host cell in a negative way. That negative impact then recruits immune cells to the region, causing an immune attack, causing redness, damage to the skin, dryness, and so on, right? That's one example of how this communication cascade can go. Or you could have really good beneficial bacteria that are either producing compounds or metabolizing compounds that the host cell doesn't want, or producing compounds that the host cell needs. That then allows the host cell to communicate to the immune system saying, hey, I'm in good shape. I don't need you here. I don't need you coming in and creating an inflammatory response. So it keeps the immune response at bay. That is a healthy, glowing looking skin. Now, the microbial community also has direct impact on the host immunity as well, and the host immune system, because the microbial community can produce compounds that will directly activate the immune response as well. So a disrupted microbiome can affect the skin in a couple of ways. One, by damaging and causing issues with the host cell itself, which will then elicit an immune response, or directly eliciting an immune response from the immune cells themselves by byproducts that the dysfunctional bacteria make. So when you have leaky skin, basically what you have is a microbial ecosystem that's causing damage to the skin and preventing important housekeeping functions of the skin to take over. And on top of that, it's also directly upregulating the response from immune cells in general, which means that we're getting a lot of immune noise in that part of the skin. When those immune cells get recruited to that part of the skin and they start attacking things, they start breaking down your skin cells. They start breaking down the ceramide layer, the fatty acid layers, the dermis, causing more and more issues and opening up more and more pathways for things to leak through the skin. What we do know about leaky skin is it does lead to chronic low-grade inflammation. The information for that came from this amazing study called the Baltimore Longitudinal Study of Aging. This was a 50-plus year study where they took each individual and followed them for 50 years, looking at all of the choices and things that they did that impact their lives, and then what those things did in terms of increasing their risk for age-related disease and mortality, right? And what was really fascinating that they found after this 50-year-long study that's still going on is that the skin, weathered and unhealthy skin, is emerging as a major risk factor for almost every single age-related disease, from Parkinson's to type 2 diabetes, right? So skin, unhealthy skin, which starts with this dysbiosis on the skin, is a risk factor for chronic conditions. They also were able to show that they can use the skin to predict a number of seemingly unconnected factors like bone density. They can look at your skin and predict your bone density, neurodegenerative conditions, cardiovascular disease, and so on. And many people would think, well, that's because the inside is unhealthy and it's reflected on the outside. So thereby the skin, unhealthy skin, is a window to the inside. That's not actually true. What they found was the dysfunction on the skin and the aging of the skin and the unhealthy appearance of the skin appeared first before you see the systemic impact, which means the skin is driving some of this impact, right? And that's where this leaky skin concept comes in, because what's happening is that there's dysbiosis on the skin. It becomes inflamed. It becomes, leaky, and then it's causing a translocation of things that shouldn't be moving through the skin and ending up in circulation, activating the immune system in ways that we don't need it activated, and driving the systemic inflammation, right? So that's what's going on here. Aged skin drives chronic disease risk. So it goes well beyond how we want to look and how we want to feel as a result of how we look. This is an independent risk factor for conditions outside of the skin. This is why we're so obsessed about it. And when we think about sieve, we don't just think about it as a cosmetic kind of thing that, hey, we can make your skin look better so you feel better about yourself. It actually is a very important part of your overall health regimen, right? Because we have to, as much as we prevent or try to improve leaky gut, we also have to think about leaky skin. How do we prevent it? How do we modulate it? And so on. So these are examples of common skin conditions that are known to be associated with skin dysbiosis, things like eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, acne, and so on. We also know that there's a specific pathway where you start to see changes in cutaneous microbes, alterations in the skin. Further, it drives further microbial imbalances, then further aging and loss of barrier, and then the reduced ability of the skin to protect the host as a barrier itself, and to protect the host from negative stimuli like things like UV radiation, blue light irradiation, which we all experience, chemicals, environmental toxins, and so on. So there's a little bit more here, but I'll stop here because I think I've addressed leaky skin enough for people to understand it. I've been able to show you how quickly the skin can respond in a positive way if you just modulate the microbiome in the skin. And I think we've touched on pretty well what it looks like and what it means to modulate the skin microbiome and why that's important. So if it makes sense, we can jump to some questions if there are questions, Michael. I know we have something like 12, 13.
There's a lot of questions, so we'll see
Yeah.
see what we're gonna do here. But that was great, and we do have the other webinar from the fall is kind of reversed. Like it starts out with the leaky skin and the skin biome stuff, and there's a little bit more of it. So I think what we'll do also when we post the recording of this, we'll just put a link to that other webinar down below. So if you want to hop over and kind of get a deeper dive into some of the skin biome, leaky skin conditions with skin and health stuff, it'll be easy for you to access. So I know there were some questions about that too. I also put a link and a code in the chat for you with a discount on the sieve if you want to try it. And to make it a bigger party, we included all the products in our shop that contain spores, and we put them into one simple page on the shop that Marianne did today. Thank you. It's the Spore Center in the shop now, and any product in our shop that contains spores is in there. The code works on all the products that have spores, from Megaspore and Kids Megaspore to the more specialized HU58 and the Restore Flora, the Phytospore for the pets. And I think I'm forgetting maybe the Serene Skin, and then the Civ Serum. Everything's in there in that. So check that out in the chat. All right. So we'll see what we can do with the questions. What probiotic skin rash for mycoplasma? I think would the Civ have any impact on a skin rash from mycoplasma?
So I can't say that we've specifically tested it on that.
Okay.
Generally, though, most of the time, we see that spores have a very strong biome balancing effect generally. And so I would guess that it has a positive effect, but I can't speak from an example.
Okay. Best soaps not to disrupt biome, or how frequently, or how to wash. Also bad or good to scrub off old skin with friction, like exfoliating.
I think exfoliating can be good. I wouldn't do it much more than once a week. I have a brush that I use, right, and I use it about once a week. Normally in the natural environment, you would kind of inadvertently exfoliate around once a week or so. So I think that's fine. Best soap to use, I try to use the most natural soap that you can, that doesn't have aromatic compounds, doesn't have perfumes. I use bar soap for me, works great. And I think the simplest, most basic bar soap that you can get, a fat-based saponification bar soap. So these are the reason why bar soaps are made from fat is because fats saponify, right? They create the soap, the bubbles, if you will. The soap doesn't sterilize the skin, right? Soap is a great way of washing the skin, but it doesn't necessarily sterilize it. So I think soap is fine to use, like natural soap is fine to use once a day if you shower once a day. I always encourage people, if you're not going out a bunch of times, if if you work every day of the week, you'll probably have to shower every day of the week. But I work at home, so if you work at home, sometimes I'll go 2 days, 3 days without showering, and it just allows your skin microbiome to settle in a little bit more. And then when you do
You're
shower,
giving
you
away the
definitely,
work from home secrets.
oh, it's the best, like some you can just be able to wake up and get to your
Yeah.
computer, right? But if you can avoid having to shower and cleanse your skin twice a day, that's a good thing, right? So if you can give
Uh,
yourself some gaps in there, it's great.
Somebody said Kieran was going to show how he puts on sieve. Can he still do that or show a
Oh, sure,
thing of
yeah.
it?
So this
You
is
gotta
what
shake
the
it.
the tube looks like. Yep. The important part is that at the bottom of the tube, it's kind of see-through, so you'll see the spores settling in there. We didn't want to suspend it because then you have to add all these other emulsification agents and all that, and we're trying to reduce the number of actives or ingredients that are in there. So you'll see the spore settling in there. You just give it a good shake every time, and it goes right back into suspension. The easiest way is just you take it and then you just put a drop on this side, a drop on this side, and one on the forehead, and then you can rub it in all of the face, neck, back of the neck, and so on. I also use it on my body. I find it to be very beneficial for my skin overall, especially on the back of my arms and areas like that. The way I use it on my body is if I have a specific area, like for example, I got a bunch of bug bites and they're irritated and red, I will put it directly, 2 or 3 drops directly on there. But generally, what I do is I take a bunch of lotion in my hand and then I add 2 or 3 drops of the lotion, mix it up, and then I add it onto my body. Right. So I really love, to me, it's made a big difference using it all over.
Okay. Do hot showers or hot bath damage biome?
They don't. I've done some studies actually on in meat products. I used to be a food safety microbiologist, so I've done a bunch of studies on killing microbes on tissue. Right now, what hot water does? Very high pressure, very hot water will reduce microbial load by 1 log. What that means is it can reduce the total microbial load by 90%. Right now, that sounds like a lot, but in microbes, they'll grow right back. Right. So if you're doing a hot shower, which is not super high pressure, not super hot, it's not scalding kind of hot, you're probably reducing it by like a third of a log or two tenths of a log, which means that you're probably reducing it by 20-30%, which is fine. Reducing the microbial load by that much in a given moment is fine because the microbes bounce right back. So I don't think you should be concerned about hot showers or hot tubs.
Okay, you might not be able to answer this one, but is it okay to apply Civ products to non-melanoma skin cancer spots or carcinoma sites?
Yeah, I would check with your doctor on that. We
That's what I
haven't done
figured.
any testing on that. What we do know is it does not induce any negative response on the skin, meaning it's not an irritant, it's not cytotoxic, so it doesn't damage or kill skin cells. It's not comedogenic. It's good for all types of skin. So we know it doesn't create an issue on normal skin. We just don't know what it does on a tumor.
Okay, that makes sense. Somebody put in the chat that the code's not working. I just messaged Marianne and she's on this. She's on here. So I think that we'll get that fixed, but just letting you know I saw that. The test, I had this question too. Helena asked it. Is there a test currently available for skin bacteria without a dermatologist intervention or something like that? Like those, what you were showing there, it piqued a
Yeah.
few people's interests. Like, how does that happen?
So we're looking at coming out with that because there really isn't a good one right now. So
Okay.
there's a chance in the next 6 months we may have something for people. We can do it as a research tool. We can, but there isn't an easy commercial one that you can use to test your skin microbiome.
Okay. If your gut microbiome isn't optional, should you even start working on the skin biome, or would they benefit each other at the same time? I don't know how related they are, but I would say yes.
Yes. So think about it this way, right? Let's say your gut microbiome is off and your skin microbiome is off. With your gut microbiome being off, what that means is that you'll have an immune system that tends to be overreactive. Because remember, your gut microbiome modulates your immunological responses throughout the body, right? Because the biggest chunks of your immune sampling tissue are in your gut. So when your gut is dysbiotic, your immune system tends to be overtly reactive. Now you've got an overtly reactive immune system. Now, on top of that, you've got a dysbiotic skin microbiome. So you have microbes on the skin that are eliciting an immune response by producing toxins and doing all kinds of bad things. So now here's some triggers to your immune response. Your immune response, because your gut microbiome is not good. So now you're going to get an overtly inflammatory immune response, not only in that local site, but then in all of the regions around it, right? And so your skin, a dysbiotic skin, can act like a negative trigger all the time for your dysfunctional immune system. So yes, the best way to go about it is by doing both, right? You want to start removing the negative stimuli, which is the dysfunction on the skin, and you want to modulate your gut microbiome. Because when you modulate your gut microbiome, you improve your overall systemic immune response. So both is really important.
Okay, very thorough answer. Is atopic dermatitis and or dermographism, sorry, I'm not a dermatologist, so some of these words are new to me, necessarily a result of skin bacteria as opposed to gut bacteria? I'm trying to understand how you differentiate between the gut and skin bacteria as causal, because we have been hearing for a long time, there are connections between dysbiosis in the gut and certain skin things. So that's a good question.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I just said, right? So keep in mind that when your gut is messed up, you have an immune system that tends to respond in an unfavorable way. So now you've got an immune system that's kind of reactive and not really very sensible in the way it responds. So it can create adverse responses to things like allergens that are coming in or food that's coming in. So then you end up with food intolerances. So this is where your immune system gets overtly responsive, and that's the responsibility of your gut microbiome. Now, if you have atopic dermatitis, what that means is you have a dysfunctional pathogen on that part of your skin that's eliciting an immune response from your dysfunctional immune system. Atopic dermatitis is absolutely associated with an overgrowth of Staph aureus. So if you have atopic dermatitis, it means that you have Staph aureus overgrown on that part of your skin. It's eliciting an immune response constantly from your immune system. And because your immune system is messed up from a messed up gut, then what's going to happen is your immune system is going to respond in the most inflammatory and egregious manner in that region. To really get control of that atopic dermatitis, you should be working on your gut, but you also need to reduce that negative trigger, which is Staph aureus. You need to replace it with things like Staph epidermidis and so on, and you do that through the quorum sensing.
That makes sense. What about red light therapy? Red light therapy is more the collagen part of the skin. I don't know if red light or near infrared affects usually those devices have both red light and near infrared. I don't know if you know those wavelengths of light affect the body. Has that ever been studied?
Not extensively, but there is some indication that it can in a positive way. And that may be part of how some of these things like red light therapy affect the body in a positive way. It's by modulating the microbiome. So keep in mind that your bacteria over time, especially on your skin, because it's outward facing, have developed the capability of utilizing ultraviolet, sound, probably even electromagnetic signaling as a way of conducting signal transduction and affecting the environment around them, right? Because these are things that are very prevalent that are hitting your surface all the time. Microbes are really good at adapting to utilizing the environment for their own benefit. So there is some indication that red light can have that impact. There's in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's a study where they used red light internally and where it was able to see a positive shift in the microbiome in the gut. I think this was so. I think I love red light. I have a Therasage little red light mat actually here by my desk, and when I'm working at the desk, I put it on in different areas as I go through the day. Oh, Michael, you're frozen. I think Mike froze out. Can people in the chat still see me? Okay, great. Well, Mike is gone. Let me see if there's a Q&A. Maybe I'll jump into the Q&A and see if I can. How does this work on psoriasis and keratosis issues? So we've had some cases with psoriasis and eczema as well. Again, both of those are associated with dysbiosis on the skin and then an overt immune response on the skin. So anytime there's redness and there's dysbiosis on the skin, this can be beneficial. So you can absolutely put it. The only thing we caution is don't put it on broken skin. If your skin is broken and there's exposure, there's blood, it's bleeding, don't put it on there. We haven't tested it on broken skin. I don't think there's an issue, but we only want to be able to recommend things that we have some certainty on. So don't put it on broken skin. But if you have eczema, psoriasis type of dry patches and it's not broken, you can absolutely put it on there, and I think you'll see some benefit in modulating the immune responses, reducing the redness in those regions as well. If mold exposure shows up on the skin, does the all occur on the skin or go through the body, liver? So I think what the question is asking is if you're exposed to mold on the skin. Hey, you're back.
My internet went out. I'm on mobile hotspot and my phone has 11%, so that's how long we have.
Perfect. All right.
All right.
We're a minute over anyway, past the hour. I
It's
was just
okay.
going through and answering a couple of the other questions. So let me answer these two about mold and fungus. So there's a question about toenail fungus. And I like this question because we've had people use it on toenail fungus and it seems to work really well, right? So you put it right around the bed of the nails, a couple of drops. Each time I would do it, maybe an hour or so before bed after maybe if you showered at night or whatever. But put it on before bed and then go to sleep. So it can be beneficial for that. And then the question about mold: if you gain mold exposure on the skin, up on skin and the skin welts, does that all occur on the skin or go through the body? Yeah. So if you get mold exposure and the skin welts up, you will likely have an internal effect on that as well, because keep in mind that the immune system is going there, it's responding, your macrophages and dendritic cells are going through and eating stuff from the mold that it's experiencing and then taking it back to the lymph nodes, showing that to the T cells and B cells. All that stuff ends up going through the systemic immune response and the lymphatic system in that region. So you will have systemic effect as well. No different than like if you get a sunburn, for example, and it welts up and it causes an actual lesion. It's not just localized to that region. You will have systemic inflammation as a result of that as well. Best way to use for postmenopausal dry, creepy skin, 1 or 2 times a day. I would start with 1 time a day. And then there's no harm in using it 2 times a day. I know a lot of people that use it morning and evening. In some cases, it can be beneficial to use it twice, but start with 1 time a day. See if it helps you. If it's helping and you feel like I want to try 2, see if it accelerates the help, you can absolutely go to that. Do we have time to address a couple more, Michael? I know you're short.
You can do a few more. I'm helpless because when I came back, I can't see any of the old questions or the old chat. So whatever you can see and want to answer, go
Okay.
for it. But I am officially useless and just here for decoration.
Okay, good. Let's see. Does this help with eczema? As I mentioned before, with eczema and psoriasis, absolutely you can use on there. You find that this product has a purging factor. So that's an interesting question, Lindsay, because we sell a lot through estheticians and skincare professionals. That's one of the primary markets. So we get a lot of good feedback from them using it with their clients, and then the clients taking it home, and then they see them again in a month and they get a lot of feedback from it. We do find that in very small percentage of people, there can be some purging in those individuals, right? So in most of those cases, these are individuals with really inflamed, sensitive skin, sensitive systems in general. They may be histamine intolerant. They might have mast cell activation. They have lesions and all that on the face. Sometimes if they use it, a percentage of those people may get more rebound redness and all that in the beginning, but that typically goes away after 3 or 4 days of using it. And then they start to see the alleviation, right? So it's a tiny percentage of people, but we have seen that. So we do want to make sure we mention that as well. Does sieve work on the brown staining of the lower legs near the ankles? So that may be like a melasma type of issue. It's hard to say because sometimes that's a circulatory issue. It could help with that. I know individuals who have the issue on their face, on their forehead, for example, and they've used it for that and have seen benefit, but they use other things as well. So I don't know. I can't say for sure that it's sieve only. I know it's not going to do any harm, so it may be worth trying. I would give it at least 2 to 3 weeks to see if you notice an improvement on there. And then is this also the cause of autoimmune skin conditions like lichen plants? Yes. So if you're referring to the skin dysbiosis that causes a trigger, and then a dysbiotic gut microbiome that causes a dysfunctional immune response, and then that dysfunctional immune response creates overt inflammatory responses in the local area of the skin. Yes, that is the pathology in which you can end up with autoimmune conditions on the skin. Basically, what happens there is when you have too much inflammatory damage in a given region of the skin, when your macrophages and dendritic cells show up to that area, they may accidentally engulf your own cells and then present your own cells as being the target to the T cells and B cells. Now you start producing antibodies against your own tissue. That leads to psoriasis and eczema and those types of autoimmune-like responses on the skin. So it becomes really important to modulate the microbiome on the skin, make sure you don't have that overt trigger on the skin, and then, of course, taking care of your gut is always foundational, right? So hopefully that helped. I was able to get through some questions. If you want to send over, oh, you can't copy and paste the questions, right, Michael? You don't have them anymore.
I cannot. Marianne
So,
might be able to. I don't know.
okay, if Marianne can do that, maybe we can grab some of these questions and answer it as a email response. If you didn't get your question answered, then you can either hit up Rebel Health and send the questions there. You can come to the Civ page and email us there as well, or on social media. We'll try to make sure we get everyone's questions answered, right? But I know you're about 7 minutes over, Michael, and
It's
I'm
okay.
over as well.
They're in bed, so I think I'm okay. Like sleep time. But I think we can ship this to the UK. I don't know. We ship other stuff to the UK. Just email Marianne. Questions about shipping and availability. It's Marianne at rebelhealthtribe.com. That's actually going to change soon. So for the last 3 minutes, I'm going to make a big announcement. Rebelhealthtribe.com is about to become rebelhealth.co. And there's going to be a full new website, a full rebranding, a brand new podcast that's launching in 2 weeks. And one of the first episodes is with Kieran. We talked about the most microbiome stuff you can fit in 40 minutes. And the other launch episodes are, one is solo with myself, one is Steve Wright, and one is Laura Adler, everybody that we collaborate with quite a bit. And in September, we're going to be hosting a training with Kieran on gut and microbiome recovery without having to do a lot of the things that a lot of people think they have to do to heal the gut. And then we're going to have a giant, huge, biggest announcement that we've ever had on Rebel Health. Is very, very exciting that we're working together to create his first ever gut and microbiome resilient gut building course. And so a million questions that we've been asked over the years are going to be answered in there. And that is going to probably be, right now, it's scheduled for September 17th. It's not guaranteed. Everything isn't set in stone yet, but all of that's very exciting. So you heard it here first, and that's a secret, so don't tell anybody yet. And so Marianne at rebelhealthtribe.com can help with the shipping. thanks for everybody who's here. Thank you for all the great questions. Sorry we couldn't get to everything. There's always more questions than we can possibly answer, but Marianne did copy them. We'll figure out a way to get things answered. You can email her, you can contact Civ, and we'll do the best we can to get all of the questions answered. And thank you to Kieran for coming here and blowing everybody away with skin stuff again. It's pretty impressive, those results. I saw some of those were like really, really, really severe acne cases. And I had pretty severe acne when I was younger, like late high school, early college, like late teens into 20. I grew up with a chlorine swimming pool. I basically lived in it in the summers. I'm sure that is not good for skin
Mhm.
biome. Ate a lot of fast food, a lot of Oreo cookies, a lot of junk, and tons of antibiotics growing up. And I would have loved to have had something like this because acne at any age sucks, but it's really horrible at that age. Like it's just really damaging to like self-esteem. And I was always super self-conscious about it. And I tried all these like really, really harsh things and it just made my skin hurt. And
Yeah.
so like it just makes everything turn red then. And it just I would have loved to have had something like this. So I love seeing those pictures of like mine was never as bad as some of those photos, but with a few of them I could definitely relate and what I would have given to like make it go away. In some of it was 90 days, but some of them 14 days. I couldn't even imagine that in 14 days. So it's really exciting. And like you said, on the other side of it, it's not just the cosmetics and that side of things. Like we're now learning that this has a very real impact on overall health. I meant to ask you a follow up on the pH and the Alzheimer's, so we might have to
Mhm.
do a follow up on that because I've never heard that before. But like skin linked to chronic disease, like it would have it's a double win. So I'm glad that it exists and that it's getting out there and it's starting to grow and that you guys are doing the studies because the studies are what really demonstrate things and get people on board, especially like the estheticians
Yeah.
and the dermatologists and the people who need to see that kind of stuff. So thank you. And we will see you in less than a month probably for that big day and big educational program and big announcement and release and launch and all of that.
Sounds good. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Take care,
All right.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.